Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Po, and today I'm doing the best books you've never heard of tag. I was tagged by Anna at Actual Spinster, who I will link below. She actually tagged me quite a while ago, but I am very behind on my tags right now. And this tag was originally created by Danika at Danika Leigh Ellis. If you check out Danika's video, she actually shows you how to use Goodreads to rank your books in order of fewest number of ratings, which is what you need in order to do this tag. So if you're interested, go ahead and check that out. Question 1. Are there many books that you've read that have below 250 ratings, 100 ratings, 25 ratings? So taking a look at Goodreads, I actually do have a number of books that fall within these categories. So I have 34 books which have below 250 ratings. And of those, 26 books have below 100 ratings. And of those, 13 have below 25 ratings. Question 2. How did you hear about the most obscure books you've read? So for this question, I'm going to take a look at the books that I've read that have fewer than 5 ratings and talk about how I heard about them. First, at 4 ratings, is Love is Deeper Than Distance by Pegadera. This is a poetry collection published by Fernwood Press, which is a very small press in Oregon. And there was actually maybe an intern or somebody who was doing social media for Fernwood Press that had a YouTube channel back when I started YouTube, and I really loved their videos and found out about this poetry collection there. It is really a very sweet collection about a woman and her relationship with her husband, who she later lost to Alzheimer's. Next, also at 4 ratings, is Sand, Sea, and Stone by Brent Thomas. Brent is a friend of mine, and this is the second book in a fantasy series that he's writing. I'm not positive if this book actually was published. He gave me a copy just to read on my own. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. It's really a very unique fantasy with a lot of cool world building and characters and a lot of fun. But I think maybe this one wasn't published in the way that his first book was published, so I might have been one of the few people who got a chance to read it. Next, at 2 ratings, is As Clean as a Bone by Emmett Wheatfall. This is another poetry collection that I heard about from the Fernwood Press YouTube channel back when they were active, and I ordered a copy and just was really interested in the poetry. This is just sort of about being a Black man in the US, and there's a lot of poems in there about race and sort of the interactions of that. Next, also at 2 ratings, is Ojibwe Tales, Stories of the Ojibwe People by Art Prisbilla. This is an illustrated book of Ojibwe mythology that Sush and I picked up on a vacation to Voyageurs National Park in Minnesota. So my guess is that this was maybe locally published and just they were selling it at the national park and we picked it up. So it may not have a large publishing distribution, but we enjoyed a lot of the tales. It's very neat to read local mythology tales. Next, at 1 rating, which was mine, is Mode du 16e siècle sur Catherine de Médicis by Annabelle Benilon, Sophie George, and Sophie Kirkdegan. So this is a book in French. It is a book about fashions of the 16th century, and it is something that Sush and I picked up at a fashion and textile museum when we were on vacation in France. So I have a feeling that this maybe is something that is being read by people who are not writing reviews on Goodreads, but definitely I don't think I'm the only person to have ever read it, just I'm the only person to have read it and reviewed it on Goodreads. And lastly, similarly at 1 review, which is mine, actually the entire entry for this I had to personally add to Goodreads because it didn't exist, is Léonard de Vinci et les Châteaux de la Loire by Frédéric Bromond and illustrated by Paula Antista, colored by Hélène Lenoble. So this is a children's picture book talking about kind of the life of Leonardo da Vinci, where there's a little girl, Zoe, who goes back in time and like meets Leonardo da Vinci. It was kind of a cute thing, but not so much my style. But yes, I've never had to add a book to Goodreads before, so that was an interesting experience. Question 3, what are some of your favorite unknown under 250 ratings books that you've read, and why should other people read them? So I actually had a very long list of books that have under 250 ratings that I loved, like that were real favorites of mine. But I narrowed this list down to just 5 books that I think are really fantastic and I really recommend other people pick up. The first is O Ranger, True Stories from Our National Parks, edited by Mark J. Saperstein. So this is a collection of nonfiction stories directed at a middle grade audience, all about park rangers and their experiences. So basically it's just a collection of tales of the park rangers' experiences. And so it has all sorts of adventures of park rangers, things like dealing with wildlife or with natural disasters or just really cool interactions. I love the US National Park System, and this book was just so much fun to read. I really loved it. Next is Showtime at the Apollo by Ted Fox, illustrated by James Otis Smith. This is a graphic novel adaptation of a nonfiction book that was written, I believe, in the 80s about the history of the Apollo Theater in Harlem. And I loved this book. I read it only this year, and it was just so cool to learn about all of the different artists and the history of the Apollo Theater. I really just loved everything about it, and I learned about so many musicians that I didn't know about before that I now have like a playlist of and I listen to just when doing dishes and things like that. I really loved this graphic novel, and I highly recommend it. Next is Uncanny Magazine, issue 24, Disabled People Destroy Science Fiction. I actually have a standalone review of this, so I will link that below. But this is something that comes up again and again because I found it really influenced a lot of how I think about the way that disability is represented in fiction. This is a collection of a bunch of SFF short stories by disabled authors, as well as essays by disabled authors about the representation of disability in SFF. Both the fiction stories and the essays were so good. Please do check out that link below to the standalone review of it that I have done if you're at all interested. But basically so much of this is about kind of the way we should be empowering people and telling stories from the perspective of people with disabilities rather than using disability as something that just motivates other characters or something to be fixed. Next is Monteverde, Memoirs of an Interstellar Linguist by Lola Robles, translated by Lauren Schimmel. This is a very slim little novella that is really beautiful in its writing style. It is about just sort of a science fiction story about a woman who is an interstellar linguist, and she is sent to a planet that is kind of isolated to learn their language. And there's so much that is interesting in terms of kind of philosophical discussions about language and about culture and about the way that we perceive people via their language and the way that we perceive language via our understanding of those cultures. And it's just, there's a lot of really interesting kind of ideas and discussions in this book, so I really enjoyed it. And lastly is Lion Island, Cuba's Warrior of Words by Margarita Engel. This is a really fantastic middle grade told in verse that is a historical fiction but based on real people that takes place in the 1800s in Cuba following a boy who is a Cuban of Chinese descent. There were many sort of indentured servants type of thing from China who were brought over to do field work and things like that in Cuba. And this boy really fought for the ending of that kind of unfair system of basically a different type of slavery for the Chinese population in Cuba. And it's just a really cool discussion of history and of politics and of social justice. And I absolutely loved this book. Question 4, any other thoughts? So I was actually kind of surprised when I did this how many books I had that were under 250 ratings. I feel like a lot of what I read because I hear somebody recommend it. But I think that there is a combination of, one, a lot of booktubers that I watch actually read kind of obscure books themselves, and two, I am a little bit of an impulse reader. So sometimes when I'm at my library, I'll just see something that looks interesting and I'll pick it up. And my librarians are very good at highlighting some lesser known books. Also, Sush and I do like to pick up books when we travel, and that is something that will lead to a lot of locally published books that may not have wide readership. So that was just interesting to me that I had so many books, and also how much I loved them. So many of these books under 250 ratings were ones that I thought were just excellent. 5 stars, I would definitely read again. I would definitely recommend it for other people. So it really shows me that the number of ratings has very little correlation to how much I'm going to enjoy a book. So definitely that was an interesting outcome of looking at this. And question 5, who do you tag? So I'm going to tag 2 people, the first of whom is Cynthia at Book Whimsy. Cynthia reads really widely and very interesting things, and especially because she's an academic, I think she probably reads a lot of things that aren't maybe popular books. So I'd love to see what she has on Goodreads that is something with fewer ratings. The other person I'd like to tag is Mariana at Mariana Quesada. Mariana is a Mexican booktuber. She reads a ton of things, but I'm just curious if maybe there's some things that she has picked up that are popular in Mexico or that have been locally published that may not have as many ratings on Goodreads, or kind of like what I experienced with the French books that I picked up, or if maybe they're just all really highly rated because maybe there's a ton of Mexican users on Goodreads. So I just love to see that kind of difference between countries. Okay, so that's all for this tag. If you are interested in doing this tag as well, please do it and let me know below that you've done it. I thought it was so much fun to go through Goodreads and take a look at which books had the fewest ratings. I was very surprised actually how few ratings some of the books that I absolutely loved had. Also, if you don't want to do the tag, but you just want to tell me down in the comments below some of the books that you've loved that have really few ratings, or sort of why you think certain books have few ratings, anything like that, I'd just be really interested to hear from you.